Imagine waking up one morning and the world is quiet. The highways are empty, the cities are still, the internet silent, friends gone, family gone. You're one of only a million humans left on the entire planet. No war, no warning, just the aftermath. Earth isn't ending, but humanity, as we know it, just did. In this haunting future, something unimaginable has occurred. The human population, once over 8 billion strong, has collapsed to a mere 1 million scattered survivors. There's no clear cause, no virus, no disaster, just a profound silence, like the world has been reset. And now, those who remain must navigate a transformed planet. This isn't just a story about survival, it's about redefinition. Without governments, nations, social media, or even electricity in many places, the very fabric of society is torn apart. What emerges isn't just a smaller version of the old world, but something entirely new. With the Earth breathing again, free from human pressure, and civilization fractured into fragments. The survivors must ask, what does it mean to be human when there are so few of us left? But before we rebuild anything, we need to understand what happens when the Earth is suddenly freed from the weight of humanity. The change is immediate. With over 99.99% of humanity gone, the Earth doesn't hesitate. Skies once choked with carbon soot and airplane contrails, now stretch clear and blue. The low hum of industry and transit vanishes. No more cars, no factories, no flights. The background noise of civilization, traffic, sirens, shouting, machinery gives way to the subtle symphony of nature. Birdsong returns to city centers. The rustle of wind through untamed grass now dominates abandoned suburbs. Within weeks, vegetation reclaims the margins of roads, creeping over sidewalks and splitting concrete with patient persistence. Grass grows through parking lots, vines climb once glass skyscrapers, and entire shopping malls fall into shadow as trees reclaim their ancestral ground. Rivers no longer choked by pollution or diverted by dams begin to flow freely again, recharting ancient paths. The oceans breathe a sigh of relief, freed from industrial fishing, plastic dumping, and oil spills. Animal populations, once driven to the brink, rebound in unexpected ways. Wolves return to former habitats. Elephants roam across territories that had long been cordoned off by highways and fences. Without people, the barriers fall, both literal and ecological. Cities like New York, Tokyo, and London begin transforming into strange hybrid zones. Ghostly metropolises interwoven with the roots of a world reborn. Climate change, once accelerating toward disaster, suddenly halts. Global CO2 levels plummet without daily emissions from billions of people. Massive factories, coal plants, and vehicles, once the engines of human progress, now sit dormant. The global temperature begins to stabilize. Species on the edge of extinction, snow leopards, rhinos, orangutans, gain a fighting chance. Coral reefs start to recover in warming oceans, no longer stressed by chemical runoff and mass tourism. Satellites orbit above in silence, still capturing images of a world in transformation. From space, the lights of Earth are no longer ablaze with human habitation. The glow dims. The scars of civilization begin to heal. Farmlands revert to wild plains. Landfills lie abandoned and still, no longer filled by the endless churn of consumer culture. Forests expand, deserts shrink, rainforests, once cut mercilessly for profit, begin to sprawl outward without chainsaws to stop them. But this is not some romantic return to Eden. The remains of humanity are everywhere. Silent homes, skyscrapers without power, airports filled with grounded planes. The Earth is healing, but it bears the ghosts of the civilization that once dominated it. Nature thrives, but not untouched. It grows around us, through us, over us. And in the absence of stewardship, not everything goes smoothly. Nuclear power plants go unattended. While many safely shut down, others risk meltdown without human oversight. Chemical plants begin to leak. Fires ignite in untended electrical grids. The Earth is reclaiming itself, yes, but it's doing so through chaos and decay, not gentle transition. Still, life adapts, always. Ecosystems shift and recalibrate. The species that once hid from human activity now become dominant. Invasive plants spread where cities once stood. Urban ecosystems evolve into something entirely new. Feral, thriving, unpredictable. This isn't post-apocalyptic. It's post-human, or at least post-human dominance. And through it all, the million survivors remain silent, witnesses to a world they no longer control. Imagine standing on a rooftop, surrounded by silence, no airplanes above, no horns below. Just wind, trees, and a horizon not scarred by smoke, but softened by mist. You are no longer a member of a civilization. You are part of a species trying to find its place again. But while the Earth begins to thrive without us, humanity must now ask, who survived, and why them? They didn't ask to be the last. 1 million people, scattered across the globe. now carry the impossible burden of continuation. No announcement preceded the collapse. No clear disaster. No aliens, no explosion, no plague, just absence. One day, billions of people were simply gone. The makeup of the 1 million survivors defines everything about what comes next. Some are random, plucked from every continent, every race, every age bracket. Others, perhaps, are remnants of isolated communities, remote villages, Arctic research stations, submarines deep beneath the sea. Maybe a lucky few were shielded by geography or chance. Or perhaps it wasn't random at all. Maybe those with the right genetics, immune systems, or even psychological profiles were somehow spared. Regardless of the mechanism, the result is profound. The survivors are not united by country or culture. There are no governments to regroup under, no embassies to coordinate relief. The internet, without technicians and engineers, collapses within days. Satellites remain overhead, but no one's left to transmit anything meaningful. What remains is a fragmented, terrified, and utterly disoriented global population, one so small, it's nearly a rumor. In major cities, a handful might remain. In rural zones, others. But the world is vast, and 1 million people can feel smaller than ever imagined when spread across continents. The average person may not see another human for weeks, or even months. Fear turns to existential despair. For many, the first instinct is not to rebuild, but to search. To walk endlessly through neighborhoods, calling out for signs of life, for families, friends, anyone. Psychologically, the trauma is staggering. It's not just loss, it's obliteration. Survivors must grapple with an identity crisis at a species-wide level. What does it mean to be human when your kind has become a statistical anomaly? Grief doesn't even cover it. Some go mad, others grow silent. A few become fiercely determined to understand the cause, to document their experience, and to preserve what was lost. But most are simply trying to stay alive, emotionally, mentally, physically. Community becomes precious if it can be found. Small groups form around shared language, values, or accident. Survivors cling to each other not out of ideology or strategy, but instinct. The human need for contact, once taken for granted in a crowded, noisy world, becomes a primal hunger. Every conversation is sacred. Every face is burned into memory. And then there's the burden of reproduction. Some see it as duty, others see it as coercion. In a world where the continuation of the species may depend on them, relationships become tangled with purpose and pressure. Is love even possible when you're tasked with restarting a civilization? Can emotional intimacy survive the weight of extinction? Others take the opposite path, choosing not to bring children into a world they barely understand. Questions of consent, of rebuilding society, of gender roles, all crash into a single, urgent problem. Do we have time to debate? Or is survival all that matters now? Survivors become storytellers. They begin to write, on walls, in notebooks, on salvaged devices. They record voices, bury messages, stack books, in fireproof safes. They don't know if humanity will last, but they want the future, if it exists, to know who they were. In the absence of religion or nationhood, the only shared belief becomes remembrance. Some survivors build new myths. Maybe this was a divine reset, a trial, a reckoning, and suddenly, humanity's oldest impulse, storytelling, becomes its most important technology. In a world where only 1 in every 8,000 people has survived, your very existence becomes a statistical miracle. Every breath is significant. Every life, a living monument. But surviving is only the beginning. Now these scattered remnants must attempt the impossible, rebuilding society from the ashes of a world they barely recognize. Rebuilding begins, not with blueprints or megacities, but with campfires, whispered agreements, and scavenged tools. With the collapse of governments, economies, and global networks, humanity is thrown back to a primal question. How do you live with others when there's no structure left? The world that once operated on massive, interdependent systems, finance, law, supply chains, education, is gone. A handful of survivors doesn't have the numbers or reach to restart nation-states. Instead, people organize around what's local, tangible, human scale. And so, new societies emerge, but they're not built from flags and constitutions. They're born from proximity, need, and trust. Some are communal farming enclaves. Others take shape in abandoned buildings or former towns, retrofitted into sustainable micro-settlements. Without global trade, survival depends on hypothetical knowledge. You either grow it, build it, or barter for it. With fewer people, power becomes less abstract and more personal. In a group of 50 or 100, leadership isn't about elections. It's about trust, skill, and mutual reliance. Those who can mediate conflict, grow food, repair machines, or teach become central. Social capital replaces wealth. Respect becomes the new currency, but systems still need to form. How do these groups resolve disputes, share resources, punish theft? Do they vote, rely on elder councils, follow charismatic leader, or do they reject hierarchy entirely? In this post-collapse world, Experimentation is thriving. Some communities lean into radical democracy. Others prefer consensus. Some adopt religious or philosophical codes as foundational law. The diversity of governance may be greater than ever, precisely because there's no longer a dominant global model. Money is obsolete. What use is a credit card in a world without banks? But barter systems quickly evolve into something more sophisticated. Items with intrinsic or communal value, seeds, batteries, medical supplies, tools, become tokens of exchange. In some areas, digital currencies might briefly survive if localized servers and solar-powered tech hubs are maintained, but more often, transactions return to face-to-face negotiation. A surprising consequence of the collapse, innovation, with necessity bearing down on every decision. Survivors tinker, adapt, and repurpose. Old cars become makeshift greenhouses. Solar panels are scavenged and rigged into patchwork power grids. Cell towers are reconfigured for ultra-local radio communication. Creativity becomes the new gold. Education, too, is reimagined. In the absence of formal schools, learning becomes intergenerational. Children don't sit at desks, they learn by doing. Building, planting, repairing, storytelling. Those who remember the old world become walking libraries. Their memories are lessons, their experiences curricula, and for those born after the collapse, this world is normal. They'll grow up never knowing skyscrapers or TikTok, only the rhythm of survival and the quiet beauty of a healing earth. But challenges remain. Small groups can only do so much. Medical emergencies, natural disasters, or even internal conflict can obliterate entire communities. And while there may be scattered attempts to form regional networks, travel is dangerous, and communication is slow. The globe has shrunk, not in physical size, but in human connection. One town may never know another exists, just 200 miles away. Cultural norms shift fast in isolated populations. What's taboo in one settlement might be law in another. New languages, dialects, and symbols evolve. Even morality fractures and reforms. One community might prioritize environmental stewardship. Another might focus on reproduction and expansion. Some might regress into authoritarian control. Others might flourish in egalitarian balance. It's a planetary petri dish for social experimentation. But amid the chaos, one constant remains: the urge to find others, to connect. Across mountaintops, survivors set up signal fires. Across plains, they build radio towers and leave maps behind. Across oceans, they revive old ships and sail toward the unknown. These aren't explorers, they're reconveners, searching not for land, but for kin. And when these fledgling societies begin to encounter each other, a new question will define the next era of humanity. Do we cooperate or compete? But before cooperation or rivalry can take hold, the survivors face a far more urgent mission: saving the memory of the lost world before it vanishes forever. With only 1 million people left and civilization's infrastructure in ruins, the most irreplaceable asset isn't gold, oil, or land. It's knowledge, and it's vanishing by the minute. Libraries sit empty, university campuses are overgrown, data centers begin to fail without power or maintenance, hard drives corrode, servers crash, books rot. Every second, centuries of human achievement. Medicine, science, art, law, culture slip further into oblivion. The survivors face a terrifying realization. Humanity's collective memory, once housed in cloud storage and server farms, is now more fragile than ever. The scramble begins. Around the world, scattered survivors begin searching, not just for food and shelter, but for wisdom. They raid abandoned schools, bookstores, labs, museums. Any place that once stored knowledge becomes a sacred site. What were once casual internet searches must now be replaced with physical manuals, textbooks, handwritten notes, and functioning tech that can preserve and replicate this information. Some communities take on the role of knowledge sanctuaries. They appoint archivists, engineers, and even philosophers as custodians of the human legacy. These settlements don't just store books. They teach. They transcribe. They digitize when they can, using solar panels to power up salvaged computers. Libraries become holy ground. Servers become sacred vaults. Others go further. They build literal arks, secure climate-controlled bunkers designed to preserve key texts, seeds, genomes, and tools. These cognitive vaults are modeled after doomsday seed banks, but instead of only biodiversity, they aim to conserve everything from quantum mechanics to agriculture, Shakespeare to solar engineering, but the obstacles are immense. Language itself begins to drift. New dialects form in isolated populations. Translation becomes a race against time. Technological literacy fades fast. There are no IT departments, new YouTube tutorials. If the survivors don't preserve how to access stored information, the data might as well be in an alien script. A laptop is useless if no one remembers how to power it on, or what a password is. Artificial intelligence, if maintained, in rare cases, could become invaluable. Legacy AI systems trained on human knowledge might act as teachers, advisors, and translators, providing a bridge between old and new. But even they require power, maintenance, and safeguards. Without guidance, even the most advanced AI could become corrupted, inaccessible, or dangerous. Oral storytelling experiences a renaissance. In small villages, elders become the living history of Earth. They pass down stories of skyscrapers, oceans of cars, glowing rectangles, and a world so connected that distance once meant nothing. Two future generations born into this post-collapse reality. Those tales may sound like mythology, a digital Olympus, a lost age of gods and giants. But not all stories are uplifting. Survivors also remember the chaos, the wars, the greed, the failure to act when the climate warmed, the misinformation, the division. These too are preserved, not out of nostalgia, but warning. New societies don't just need engineering manuals. They need ethical blueprints, guides to what not to repeat. Some communities create memory walls, massive stone or metal carvings with essential knowledge etched permanently into their surfaces. They mix scientific principles with fables, formulas with parables. The idea, even if language changes or books burn, these symbols might be deciphered by future humans or whatever comes after them. But with every passing generation, the chance of full recovery diminishes. Rebuilding space travel, nanotechnology, or quantum computing from scratch is nearly impossible without the industrial and intellectual infrastructure we once had. Civilization may never return to what it was. And maybe that's okay, because even as much is lost, what remains is distilled. Survivors choose what matters, what's sacred, what's worth remembering. And in doing so, they don't just preserve knowledge, they redefine it. Yet with so much of the old world slipping away, the survivors begin to ask a deeper question. What is humanity for, now that everything we once lived for is gone? With civilization's foundations erased and the comforts of modern life vanished, humanity is left staring into a spiritual and existential void. The survivors have enough to live, shelter, food, warmth, but what are they now living for? In the old world, meaning was bundled into careers, education, entertainment, status. Life was a ladder, climb higher, earn more, get more. But that ladder no longer exists. There are no corporations, no universities, no viral fame, no GDP. The entire structure that once gave people a sense of progress and purpose has disintegrated, and from its ruins emerges a profound opportunity and a dangerous vacuum. Some turn inward. With time no longer consumed by office work or digital distraction, people begin to rediscover stillness, a walk through the forest, the joy of tending to a garden, the peace of long, uninterrupted conversation. Entire communities adopt slow-living philosophies. They prioritize emotional well-being, collective care, and the preservation of beauty. Others dive into spirituality. With the mass death of billions and the inexplicable nature of the collapse, many seek answers beyond logic. New religions are born. Some see the event as a cosmic cleansing. Others view the survivors as chosen stewards of a renewed earth. Rituals emerge from fragments of old faiths, oral myths, and newly imagined narratives. These beliefs, while diverse, give people a framework, something to organize their pain, their hope, and their future around. But purpose doesn't have to be religious. For many, it becomes about repairing, healing the planet, healing each other, preserving peace. Children grow up learning not just how to survive, but how to honor the fragility of existence. Do no harm becomes more than a phrase. It becomes the guiding principle of culture. Human beings no longer see themselves as masters of the earth, but as guardians of it. Art is blossoming, with survival no longer a daily emergency. Expression returns, music, painting, storytelling, and sculpture emerge from ruins and reclaimed ruins. Old billboards become murals. Broken walls become canvases. In a world that often feels like a graveyard, art becomes a way to celebrate life, to document it, and to mourn what was lost. Relationships take on deeper weight. In a world where people are scarce, each bond becomes exponentially more meaningful. Marriages aren't about tax benefits. They're about legacy, trust, and mutual survival. Friendships become lifelines. Children are rare and sacred. Elders are revered not just for wisdom, but for being living bridges to the old world. Technology is viewed differently too. No longer a tool for endless progress. It becomes a tool for balance. Communities integrate sustainable tech, solar panels, water filtration, basic computing, but resist overdependence. Simplicity is now a virtue. Balance with nature is a core value. Hypergrowth is considered toxic, even taboo, but not all survivors agree on the slower, mindful path. Some yearn for the old world's pace, its power, its dominance. They want cities to rise again, machines to roar, internet to return. And so, quiet tensions begin to form between those who wish to rebuild differently and those who wish to restore what was lost. These competing visions of the future begin to shape culture. In some communities, schools teach humility, ecological ethics, and emotional literacy. In others, children are trained in logic, resilience, and engineering. Civilization starts to splinter into philosophical tribes, not divided by ethnicity or geography, but by purpose. Still, one idea echoes across nearly all survivors. We must deserve this second chance. Whether viewed as divine mercy, cosmic accident, or brutal statistical fluke, survival feels earned, or at least, not to be wasted. We are the 1 in 8,000, they say. Let's not fail again. And so a new kind of human identity emerges, not as consumers or conquerors, but as caretakers, explorers, rememberers, story carriers, children of collapse, but parents of what comes next. But even with all this newfound meaning, there's a looming question no one can ignore. With so few of us left, how long can this fragile civilization actually last? For all its beauty, simplicity, and renewal, this post-collapse world teeters on a knife's edge. 1 million humans may sound like a fresh start, but it's also an incredibly delicate population. A single mistake, a new virus, a natural disaster, or even simple bad luck could push humanity into true extinction. The first challenge is biological. With such a limited gene pool, the risk of genetic bottleneck becomes dangerously high. Inbreeding, hereditary diseases, and fertility complications threaten long-term survival. Communities must be careful, very careful, about reproduction. Some form early agreements to swap members across settlements to diversify lineage. Others create genetic archives or attempt to restart rudimentary IVF systems using salvaged medical tech. But for most, it's trial, error, and hope. Then there's health. Even minor infections can turn deadly without global supply chains and pharmaceutical production. Antibiotics expire. Surgeries become risky without sterile conditions. A broken bone, a deep cut, or a fever can now kill. The survivors may be living in harmony with nature, but nature remains indifferent and brutal. Infrastructure, already collapsing, is held together by improvisation. Solar panels degrade over time. Battery life wanes. Roads and bridges, once maintained by massive engineering departments, slowly give way to erosion and overgrowth. Communities must constantly innovate with fewer and fewer tools. Every problem is a lesson in ingenuity. Every failure, a potential tragedy. Food and water, while more abundant in a depopulated world, still come with caveat. Without industrial farming, survivors rely on permaculture, seed saving, and manual labor. If a growing season fails or if a group loses access to clean water, they can't just drive to another town, because there might not be another town. Famine, while rare now, is possible again. Then there's memory. Despite the best efforts of knowledge keepers, language shifts, meaning erodes, and some essential understandings slip through the cracks. Complex sciences are especially vulnerable. Future generations might know how to build a wind turbine, but not how to refine silicon wafers. They might understand that germs cause disease, but forget how to manufacture antibiotics. And so, paradoxically, as survivors simplify life, they also edge toward stagnation, not in spirit, but in capacity. Civilization's collapse set the species back not decades, but potentially millennia. Politics re-emerge in strange ways. As communities connect and trade grows, so does disagreement. Borders are redefined, not as nations, but as cultural lines. Those who wish to live in harmony with nature versus those who push for a second industrial age. Tensions rise, and without the safeguards of mass communication or formal institutions, misunderstandings can quickly spiral into violence. Then there's ideology. Myths of the collapse become religion. Some believe humanity was judged. Others see the old world as a test. We failed. Prophets arise. Cults form. Extremes bloom in isolation. One community might ban technology entirely. Another might use preserved tech to elevate a single ruling class. Diversity becomes both a strength and a source of friction. Yet, hope persists. Birth rates begin to rise. Not explosively, but steadily. Children grow up unburdened by the trauma of the collapse. For them, the world has always been this way. They know no advertisements, no pollution, no internet. Only open skies, handmade tools, and stories of the time before. They learn from the mistakes of their ancestors, not through textbooks, but through lived culture. A generation emerges that is both ancient and new. They walk barefoot through forests, with solar-powered tablets slung over their shoulders. They plant crops with one hand, while reciting quantum theory with the other. They sit around fires and debate philosophy, not for academic status, but to shape real decisions, to steer humanity's second chance. Eventually, one of two paths must emerge. Either humanity stabilizes, growing slowly, carefully, ethically, choosing balance over dominance, or history repeats. A rediscovery of technology leads to overpopulation, extraction, and ultimately, another fall. The world watches silently. And so we're left with a haunting question. If you were one of the last million, how would you choose to shape the future? Would you rebuild what was lost, or create something entirely new? 1 million people out of billions. In this future, humanity isn't extinct, but it's reborn, not through triumph, but through tragedy. The earth, once burdened by our ambition, now breathes freely. Forests return, animals flourish. The sky is clean. The silence is sacred. And from this silence, something unfamiliar and profound emerges. A chance not just to survive, but to redefine what it means to be human. No longer are we chasing infinite growth or digital dopamine. No longer are we divided by borders, consumed by competition, or obsessed with status. In this world, every choice echoes through generations. Every person matters. Every action is a building block for a future that hasn't yet decided what shape it will take. Maybe we return to the stars, wiser, slower, gentler. Maybe we choose the soil over the screen and peace over profit. Or maybe we fail again. But this time, we can't say we weren't warned. Because if the collapse taught us anything, it's that civilization isn't indestructible, and that the most fragile thing in the universe might not be a glass planet or a dying star. It might just be us. But now it's your turn to weigh in. What kind of world would you build if you were among the last million humans? If this alternate future made you reflect, even just for a second, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss our next deep dive into humanity's strangest possibilities. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Would you rebuild the old world? Or start something completely new? Thanks for watching. Stay curious. Stay human.